Welcome to Lively Conversations. I have Kelly Brogan with me today. Welcome, Kelly.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Kelly is a holistic psychiatrist, author of the New York Times bestselling book, A Mind of Your Own, Own Yourself, the children's book, A Time for Rain, and co-editor of the landmark textbook, Integrative Therapies for Depression. She's the founder of the online healing program, Vital Mind Reset, and the membership community, Vital Life Project. She has completed her psychiatric training and fellowship at NYU Medical Center after graduating from Cornell University Medical College, and has a Bachelor of Science from MIT in Systems Neuroscience. She's specialized in root cause resolution approach to psychiatric syndromes and symptoms. And that's quite a lineup there, Kelly.
It's a very debt-filled biography. Basically, that's what I hear.
Well, part of what we do here on Lovely Conversations is we interview some of our favorite people and visionaries in terms of how and why they, I guess, they live the life they live. And if they live it lively, we get extra excited. And I think that given your experience, and I know that you and I have spoken before, if there's anything that I know about this interview is that you're not going to sugarcoat anything for us. And I think this is a really important, there's a really good reason for that. And that is because when we're looking at things like addiction and depression, that I just recently had a friend of mine that I work with, and she said to me, look, I have someone staying with me and they're going through depression. And I said, what are your strategies? And she said, look, I feel like I need to tippy toe and just like not make anything worse. And I remember thinking and feeling at the time, and I just said it, and I said, well, maybe the best thing you can do for somebody who's going through a hard time and depression is to actually sit with them and inquire. And I know that that is something that you've done over and over again. And when it comes to the line of work of social media addiction and addiction to technology, one thing that I feel like we're often doing as a society is just accepting that that is like normal now. And I think that when we sit with it and we inquire is when we actually start to get deeper into our understanding. And so that's what we're going to do today. Is I would love to start off by hearing your thoughts on this rise of the digital addiction and the constant need and the pull to be connected, and how that's actually impacting, these meaningful human interactions about what this all means.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a big question. And I was having this conversation with my daughters who I've been, I would say in the past, like 8 or so months. In fact, it culminated in like a parenting masterclass that I did where I just exposed all the ways that I have failed as a mother, and you pay me for that. You get to watch it. No, I'm kidding. But I have had a lot of humbling moments in my recognition of the ways that I had sort of created a grid of conditional parenting for my daughters around holistic living. And that a lot of my fear-based, control-oriented impulses as a mother seem to be for their for their good, right? Or like all of that, those kinds of tropes that we hear when we are in the sort of tyrannical, hierarchical space of authoritative dynamics. And long story short, I, after initially protesting, decided that allowing, as if I, at this point with a 14-year-old have a choice, allowed my daughter to get an iPhone. She told me that she wanted one. And initially I was like, oh, well, we don't do that here, and talked to her about alternatives like the above phone and whatever else. And she was very clear with me that this is what she's decided is best for her. And that if all that I have been indoctrinating her with all of these years around trusting her inner agency and her inner compass was true, then when does that begin? Right? So when does Kelly knowing better for my daughter end? And when does her knowing better for herself begin? And so she has a phone at this point. And I am watching her navigate it. And we were having a discussion about what it is to bring intentionality and to bring present time awareness to the interaction with this device, and how it can be used as an extraordinary tool, right? So how you can be the master of this device rather than the slave. to it. And we're talking about like what it would be to just simply say internally, right? Every time you pick up a device, or every time I sit in front of my computer or whatever it is, turn on my television or whatever, I am choosing this. Right? What if all of the 90 plus times that the average person picks up their phone in a day, what if just for, what does that sentence take? Like 1.5 seconds, right? For that moment before the behavior is executed, you just tell yourself, I am choosing this. I'm choosing to use this. I'm just curious about whether or not, I have no empirical data, about whether or not that would actually facilitate a shift into the kind of dominance that we can inhabit in our own lifescape that signifies sovereignty. Even on a nervous system level, I am choosing this, right? Whenever we encounter what would otherwise look in our lives like things that are happening to us, if we bring that phrase to bear, does it shift the internal landscape and maybe even the neurobiology, right? Like out of the helpless, dependent, fight or flight, signature into this capacity for resiliency and regeneration that we know that we have. I mean, you wouldn't be having this conversation if you didn't believe fundamentally that we are incredibly resilient beings and that we can recover from, regenerate from, and otherwise, triumph over. Here's my cat joining the conversation. Triumph over anything, literally anything that we are presented with, including the chemtrails and the glyphosate and the gluten and the trauma, right? Like including all of it. And that inner orientation and the narrative that we are telling about our circumstances and the inner coherence that we can arrive to, right? So when you say, I am choosing this, I am choosing to pick up this phone right now, there's an invitation internally to align, right? To say, I want to be doing this, rather than to engage in what is ultimately potentially a shame-inducing space of, maybe I shouldn't be doing this, but I'm doing it anyway. And maybe if nobody sees, or I don't really have to, acknowledge it, then it's okay. But of course, that inner record is well kept. And that incoherence inside, I believe, is the source of illness, right? So when we are in internal conflict, it's so personal, right? You could have one beer a month, right? And feel like that is one beer too many and generate an internal conflict that somebody having 6 beers a day doesn't have, right? It's perhaps how and why we see that there are not direct correlations always with the kind of disease promoting exposures we think should be bad for everyone. Well, they're not, we all know the 90-plus-year-old smoking a pack a day kind of a thing. So what are the variables here? And I've become really interested in what it takes to recruit our own will and awareness of such, like to the realms of addiction, and to really see, can we get all of us in line with this, right? Is it possible for the whole of me to be behind this choice? And if not, then there's a lot of fertile soil, especially in the dimensions of shame. I think shame is the most expensive energetic currency we can engage. And, when you have incoherence within, there's always going to be hiding. There's always going to be shame. And there are ways to begin to smoke that out, to try on what it is to get totally aligned with what you're doing, or to choose not to do it.
Yeah, you touched on shame, which is such a big one, isn't it? Because a lot of what, the science is uncovering is around this whole comparing culture that is, prevalent online, and comparing ourselves and striving for that online perfection and that online perfect photo. How do you think that this pursuit of perfection affects our well-being and our overall ability to live life lively?
Well, it's just how we've learned to secure validation is externally, right? So when we are, it can come from the most humble of origins, right? When we are validated on the outside for certain behaviors, we learn to hide others. And that validation is more than just like a pat on the head. It is a lifeline, an existential connection to our caregivers. And the validation, spectrum that we learn to support is what we take into adulthood. And so on that metric system, we are going to be evaluating everyone around us so that we can determine our relative safety. I mean, it's a matter of safety on that scale. So the comparison, you could say, oh, well, it's so sad that people are so insecure that they have to look to others. But this is native. It's native to the experience of conditional parenting that we all endured. And so it makes natural sense. Even what we call perfectionism, right? So if you are somebody who learned that there is punishment, right? And there are consequences associated with not being right and perfectly right, then it makes complete and total sense that you would continue to engage that strategy throughout your adult life, especially because we are not initiated at any point. So there's not an alchemy, from our childlike strategies into our adult-like behavior. So I don't like to think of it as a pathology or even a problem. It's adaptive and it does work, right? To source from the outside that which we don't imagine is available on the inside. And, it is the maturation of, I think of like a lot of gendered dynamics within, the polarity within, right? So you could say it's the maturation of the masculine inside to self-validate, to self-protect, and to offer that felt experience of you are safe. That matures from within, but it begins from this very immature place. And I don't mean that pejoratively, but it's actually immature on the developmental spectrum, place of competition and comparison and sort of the zero-sum game, right? There's a way that if you look at teenage boys, right, they can be enculturated around competition, and it's super healthy and it's essential, and natural hierarchies emerge. All of these things have a light side, but within ourselves, when we really persist in these early stages, what psychiatry would call like primitive psychological defenses, it can hurt eventually, right? It can induce suffering because we aren't meant to source extrinsically what is available, the inspiration, the validation on the outside that is available from our inner polarity within, from our inner, father, our inner mother. And there's a point at which, that is not a sustainable strategy. And I think that's when we start to see, experiences of what could be deemed like psychiatric pathology or depression or anxiety and even suicidality. And it's because those things should arise from a life lived without an internal locus of control. That is the invitation to begin this maturational process, to begin this reclamation journey.
Well, interestingly, I was just having a bit of a laugh to myself as you were saying that, because part of my immaturity online and what I really enjoy are the memes. And honestly, like I find that there are so many, there's more attention now being put onto intentional use of technology and kind of having the awareness that I'm on this right now and I'm doing this thing right now. And I think that is what you just pointed out earlier, is that it's a really healthy thing when you can find the awareness of whatever you're doing in that space. And you're aware that it's not, in the physical per se, but it is something that we engage with every single day. And there's an intentionality to that. And that's a really healthy way for us to engage.
Yeah, it's interesting because as you're saying that, I'm thinking of the word healthy and like what the shifting sands of what we think of as healthy, right? Like, what does that even really mean? And I think I could assume that you and I would both agree that it has something to do with vital force energy, right? With like the access to, I would call it eros, even our inner access to the animating force, that connects us to the divine. And what compromises that? What interferes with that? And how do we identify that line between, the experience of technology as life-giving and somehow life taking, right? Like it's a fine line, and probably a very personal line, right? And I think about how many, I was just saying to a girlfriend today, I'm a big voice noter, right? And so I do a lot of voice noting with my intimate circle of women. And I was just feeling, I have a girlfriend who just moved out of town, and I was just feeling this sense of like ache, like an ache, and a sense of like, this is not working for me, right? This is life taking now, that I have so many of my relationships that are voice note relationships. And I'm sure many, people listening can relate. And that's even sometimes with my friends who live here in Miami with me. Most of our relationship is conducted on voice note. And, there's logistics and the kids and the this and the that and travel. And when we deprioritize the in-person lived experience, to a certain extent, it will begin to generate that ache, that discomfort, that sense of like, this is not giving me life anymore than it is that is taking it. And that line is something I think we can only feel in our bodies, right? When you're online, when you're scrolling, when your eyes are on a screen for just those 3 minutes too long, right? And now it's sapping vital force energy rather than somehow igniting, your creative energy or inspiring you. I mean, I'd be the first to say, you can see a meme or watch a video or be exposed to somebody's, creative work online, and it can absolutely be life-giving. I mean, there are times where, I scroll TikTok and I fall in love with humanity again. Right? Like actually in the span of 5 minutes. And this is, from somebody who was crusading so violently, against that platform and related platforms just a couple of years ago, that there's like a very uncomfortable, again, like humility required for me to acknowledge that I was making dogmatic decisions and holding very rigid boundaries, which I do believe there is a place for that. I mean, my whole program is that, right? It's like, how do you activate and initiate your inner father, so that you can hold your commitments, make your choices, and like no bullshit, right? Like go big or go home, follow through for 1 month of your life. I'm a big believer in those boundaries being necessary maturationally. But then there comes a time where the safety comes from trusting the moment-to-moment decisions you make, even if they seemingly defy the rules that you set up for yourself. And I don't think you can prematurely jump into this because your inner masculine won't be online yet, right? But then there's a moment where it's like, maybe it would feel good for me to pick up, this gadget, right? And spend 5 minutes here. I'm going to assess, does it still feel good? Does it still feel good? And know when my body is saying, now's the moment to put it down. So trusting ourselves to make these kinds of decisions as we interact with tech, I think is actually the only way to navigate, because the rules, I mean, in the time that I was off my smartphone, I was literally the only, I think I'm the only person I know, like in my generational cohort. I have some older, generational like friends like Tom Cowan or whatever who doesn't have a smartphone, right? So I know there's people, for sure there's people, and maybe now more than ever, but it's not necessarily a scalable path. Okay, so what is? I think what is coming into enough embodied attunement that you stay in your body while you are interacting with this technology, and you use the signs that your body gives you to determine when you go from life-giving to life-taking dynamics.
I think this brings us perfectly to the question around photography. I know that you have a passion for that as well. And we have spoken in the past, and I mentioned to quite a number of my girlfriends how much of an impact it had when you said to me, well, here I am watching the whales from the lighthouse, Kelly, and I look to my left and I look to my right, and all I see are people taking the photos and the videos of the whale. And you said something to me that was so profound, it stuck with me now for a good year. And it's something I refer to. It's a reference point for me. And you said to me that it's because a lot of people do not have practice to hold beauty in their bodies. And so we're putting a device between us and an experience that we do not fully immerse ourselves in moments because we don't have that practice. And I think we have to, like you talked about boundaries as well, I think addressing the fact that we have these boundaries around us, and oftentimes the technology is in that space, you know, whether it's sleeping next to us on the bedside table, which is 70% of the case for the average mobile phone user. And we aren't necessarily holding those boundaries. And, you know, your program is based on that, as you said. So I think what I'd really love to delve into is that practice that you talked about. How do we practice holding beauty in our body?
This is something I have been working on for, I would say, the past 2 or so years. And it is the practice I have the most defiance around. I mean, you could tell me to change my diet all day long, right? You could tell me to fast on water. You know, you could tell me to make this behavioral change or that. And I have the discipline. I can recruit to do any of those things. But the practice of expanding my capacity for pleasure specifically and presence to the like extraordinary beauty all around me. I mean, I could look out the window and probably start crying, right? Just like if I actually were to feel it and be present to it. And again, that is the mature masculine. It is the vector of attention, controlling the vector of your attention with like this really strong spine and powerful presence. That's the mature masculine that beholds the feminine, right? That is here in rapture, right? Around all that is beautiful and already here. There's nothing that has to be created or changed, the perfection of it. It is one of the most challenging experiences. I mean, I, could be by myself and looking at my backyard, and it could be, and I'll want to take a video of it or take a picture of it. And it's in part because the experience of it is too much. So how I have worked toward, I would say, expanding my capacity for pleasure is in simple exercises, right? So like one of these I learned from my coach, Whitney. I mean, it's so simple. I don't even know that she would call it an exercise, but it's literally, I'll set a 10-minute timer, sometimes 8. I think I started with like 3 or 5. I will lay nude in my bed and I'll have all sorts of like sensory toys around me, like feathers or, soft cloth or like a fork or, whatever, all sorts of like, just household objects, right? That have different sensory qualities. And I will just listen to what my body wants. And it might be usually the first couple of minutes are like, oh, I want to turn the air conditioning down, or I want to put socks on, or, maybe I want a blanket or whatever, making myself more comfortable. But then it might be, like, oh, I think I want to massage, and I don't question any of it, whatever it is, massage like the left side of my neck, or like, maybe it would feel good. I have this like scalp massager, like maybe I'll like put that on my head, or maybe actually I want to put like lotion on my right knee. Sometimes it involves like self-pleasure or like direct genital touch. Sometimes I'll, run my hands over my breasts, like whatever it is, but more often than not, it's like pretty G-rated. And it involves, I think, principally restoring trust with my body's desires, right? So that my body has the sense like I actually give a shit and I'm here and I'm listening. And it's also a practice of getting out of my head so that I'm not putting pleasure on my body, right? I'm allowing the experience of pleasure. And honestly, it's mostly just generating comfort, like ever increasing levels of comfort and positive sensation. And that is directed from within. So, that simple exercise can be a place to start, because then you might be able to have the ecstatic orgasmic experience. You might be able to like be totally present in these moments with your animals and your children, you might be able to be out in nature and allow it to fill you, fill you up with the kind of life-giving energy that otherwise we are going to try to recruit through our addictions, right? Getting those little hits of life force through these surrogate pathways. So it's challenging. It's very challenging, and it's because it involves ending cycles, generational cycles of disembodiment and dissociation that were actually necessary, because when we are experiencing stress on the outside that our body actually can't capacitate, we have this ingenious mechanism called dissociation that becomes available, and undoing that, that habit, that reflex, it takes a lot of dedication and practice, at least in my experience as somebody who's very cerebrally defended, just flies up into my head the moment that it's too much sensation.
Speaking of sensation, I did a breathwork course, and one of the things the facilitator, Dan, and Sarah, they were asking people to sort of express how they were feeling after like the first sort of introduction of what we're going to embark on. And they said, what are you feeling in the body? And people were saying, oh, I feel joy, I feel excitement and things like that. And he just stopped after about 5 people, that it kind of went on that trajectory. And he said, no, I'm not asking you for a word. I'm asking you for a feeling. I'm asking you to tell me what in the body is happening right now to you. And so the next person in line was me. And I just felt my body like shaking. Like I felt shakes and tingles in my fingers. And I felt like a shake, like a distinctive shake, particularly in my hands. And that was sort of the trajectory that these things take. Is like we often do these types of like courses or introductions to things, and we find like a word, but what we're really missing is that recognition of what is going on in the body. What is the body trying to tell me? What is the body communicating to me? And that communication, that connection, rather than like turning our hands into blunt instruments and always like, just holding a device in the hand, but reminding ourselves like, oh my God, I've got these tingles in my hand, like, and these are a creative force. I mean, I held my child, I can play music, I can bake, I can grow, I can garden. I mean, these hands are so valuable. And when I find myself just putting a device in them, I'm not feeling as much as if I'm doing these activities. And so I know that to bring myself back, I start to feel myself in the moment, and I feel what's going on in my body. And sometimes I start to feel things in my hair, like I feel like things pulling around my hair, and just these sensations of the awareness of that part of me is really what I enjoy as well. Like I know when you were talking, I was feeling into that as well, because it's a curious place. And most people think that their body is just this thing they carry around like a backpack, but it is full of like all these, like it's just full of feeling, it's full of touch, it's full of all these other elements that, when we actually think about it, it could probably blow our minds what this body is capable of and how deep we can go within. And that inside out change, which is what you speak into so beautifully, which is that, that model of victim consciousness around the victim, the perpetrator, and the what's the other one? Victim, perpetrator, and rescuer. Thank you. And the rescuer. And I've noticed even that, how that feels in my body when I'm doing that. I notice what it feels like in my body when I'm feeling like I'm a victim in the moment, or if I'm feeling like a perpetrator or a rescuer in the moment. That the difference in where my body's even positioned when I'm playing a role in that triangle, and getting out of that triangle and just noticing that there's just like this scene playing out in front of me, and having the observation of my body, observing that, has been some of the most important work that I've personally done. Is just not fitting, not sort of slotting, like a Whoopi Goldberg moment where I'm not like a sort of slotting into one of these. And I think we've all got these reference points of nostalgia of what our body felt like when we think back, look back, feel back. But in the moment, actually feeling something and recognizing it and feeling the beauty in that moment is, I think, the most exciting part about being alive is like not even wondering what's going to happen or even thinking what has happened. It's just like, oh my God, look what's happening right now for me in this moment. I am alive and this is amazing. Like, it's so amazing to be alive. And I think I think this is why the technology world does as well as it does, is it because it keeps us thinking about what's the next thing to do and scroll. It's like, it's always like that kind of movement out of whatever it is that you're looking at. And when you said that before, you said like, what if you're just like completely enjoying the TikTok of, and what you're loving about humanity, just enjoying it. And you can enjoy that in the moment without having anxiety about what it is that you need to do next, or what's the next thing that you need to have a look at. And I think that's, you've nailed that one, because I really enjoy it too. Like, there have been TikTok videos that I've seen, and I'm not even on TikTok. Someone just sends me like a clip of something from TikTok, and I just have to laugh, because in that moment it did something to make me feel really like, oh, this actually felt really, really fun or really engaging. And I don't have to have that feeling of like, oh, I shouldn't be on a device. The rules of like what I should or should not be doing. And when we like let go of that and just feel into whatever the body's feeling from watching that, listening to that, then I think we know more than, all the education we've ever had in our lives. Because I think a lot of people refer back to that rewards and punishment model of like, oh, this is something good to do, this is something that's not good to do. Someone told me that once upon a time, and I've made my boundaries fit into that. And I think you break those, Kelly. You really kind of like, you challenge yourself. I mean, one of your podcasts that I listened to, which had me and my girlfriends laughing in a dinner table for like hours, was like 25 things that I used to judge that I now do. And we all kind of went through our own examples of it. And it was just such an incredibly enlightening dinner that we got so real and raw with each other. And I'm still laughing even thinking about it now, because I'm very similar. It's like people kind of say to me like, oh, do you remember when you said? And I was like, yeah, but I don't say that anymore because I don't think that anymore. And they're like, what? But you said that. I was like, I know, I said that. And now I don't think
Aren't
that.
I funny? Exactly. It's liberating, to just own the way that we change, because it's such a part of the tribal consciousness, like the shadow of it, really, that moving beyond the pale, that like becoming a different version of yourself is discouraged. But when you can just own it and you don't experience your past selves as having been bad and wrong, because now the current self is right, then it becomes kind of funny, right? It's like my friends are just like waiting for the next way I'm going to change my mind like radically into, a terrain that I swore I would never occupy. It's part of maturing, is trying on all of these different identities and entering into that identity plasticity, so that you can understand you're not any of the trappings, right? You're not the beliefs, you're not the allegiance to this group or that group or this ideology or that. Like, there is a you-ness that you can get in touch with that comes with you no matter what you're up to,
Amazing. So Kelly, we're going to finish off this interview with a few fun fact questions and see if you can get some of these right or not. It doesn't matter. It's just more of an interesting game to play. And let's see how we go. So how many times a day on average do you think, Kelly, that people tap, swipe, click their screens?
Oh, Lord. I would say it's probably in the high hundreds, like maybe above 500.
2,617 times a day.
Shit. Yeah, I knew it was up there.
It was high.
God.
Yeah. Okay. So next question. What is your most frequently used emoji, if you do use them?
Oh my God. Yes, I do. And my daughters are like, Mama, please stop. It's like psychiatrically diagnostic that you keep using this one. It's like the crazy one, like where it's like the tongue going out and the eyes are like swirling around. Like, for me, that's just apparently like depicts what's going on. For Kelly at any given time, it's like crazy faced emoji. So yeah, it's pretty much that one. I need to branch out.
Love it. So the next question is, how many unread emails or messages do you think you have right now?
Well, in the time that we've been talking, I've probably accumulated, I would say like 20 or so. But part of my, I don't know, part of my relationship to tasks is that I have a growing but limited tolerance for incompletion. So I will go to bed with zero unread anything every night. And sometimes that means that my response is like one word, or sometimes it means I choose to like open and ignore something or whatever. But I don't do well with having incomplete threads. And I think that's not like a virtuous thing. In fact, because it shows up in my personal life in some pretty damaging ways that I seek premature completion or resolution, and then end up trying to control that process in a way that isn't always beneficial for both parties, let's say. So yeah, but it does manifest that way with tech and communications.
Oh, I feel you there. I'm very much similar to that, actually, myself. So next question, when was the last time you did something for the first time?
Oh my God. I mean, very recently, I signed up for a gym membership today. I have never done that in my entire life. I took my first jujitsu class recently. I took my first salsa partner dancing class. I have done all sorts of like travel by myself recently that I've never done before. I mean, this is like a regular thing for me where I'm having all these firsts. And it's part of also like getting comfortable with being like a novice, because when you're, when my identity has been so built around mastery and my expertise that, to go to a class and be so bad at it that I'm like confused and have that sense of disorientation and like hopelessness it's very, I don't know, feels very life-giving for me to get comfortable with sucking at things, and start trying new things requires that. I mean, there are many things like gardening. Like I was just thinking today, I was like, wow, I really, really have sucked at that. But I gave it a college try, like I go, oh, you know what it was? Cause I bought fennel from the store. I love fennel. I'm Italian. And so like I eat a lot of fennel, and, or maybe it's just a Tuscan thing. I don't know. But anyway, and I was like cutting up this fennel, and I was like, I remember when I grew this, and it literally took like a year to grow like 6 bulbs of fennel. And like, I just like the whole process was so complicated and I just really wasn't that good at gardening. Right. So like, and that's okay. Like I started sewing, I don't know, 2 years ago. And I love it. And I'm like very mediocre, like highly mediocre at it. And like even pole dance, which is like probably one of my greatest passions. Like I've been at it for over a year, and I'm like a very solid beginner still. I mean, in all the other realms of my life, when I decide to learn about something, I become an expert in it within weeks. Sometimes, like that's what I'm even known for. Like when I become interested in something, like I'll go deep, and then I'm like teaching it 2 months later, so it's, I think, a very important character development for me to try new things and not do them well.
Oh, I love this. Do you have a morning routine?
Oh, yes. It's funny. I just left a message, as we were saying, for one of my girlfriends. And yesterday I had a totally uncommitted, unstructured day, save for one dance class that I went to. And I spent the entire day with like self-care activities, right? So I did that exercise I mentioned to you earlier. I did like fascia and lymphatic work on myself at home. I did like dry brushing, and then oiled my whole body. And then I went for like a walk outside, and then I like sat in my backyard and told like all the plants that I love them. And then, I sat and pet my 2 cats who are right here for like, just like whatever time it felt good for me to do that. Then I practiced singing, and it was just like a journal. Like it was just the whole friggin' day was just Kelly taking care of Kelly. It could be a full-time. I've even seen funny TikToks about this. Like it could be a literal full-time job just to take care of me. So yeah, I mean, my morning routine changes all the time. However, the container for it is not anything that I compromise pretty much under any circumstances. So these days, my morning routine involves I would say like, it's like 3 things that I do every morning. One is this, like I don't know what to call it, like a face massage, like a lymphatics program that I'm doing. And I absolutely love, don't I look fantastic? Literally have noticed a difference in like weeks. It's unbelievable. And it's a half an hour. It's so long, right? I would never spend that much time touching my own face, neck, and shoulders. And I'm absolutely loving it. So that's actually the first thing I do. Then I will sit for 15 minutes and just be with myself. So meditate, quote unquote, but it's just like sitting. And then I will do some form of dance or movement, or I have a SoulCycle bike in my house. So I'll do something like that, but just for half an hour, like nothing too crazy. And after those 3 things, then, I proceed with my day and my commitments and whatever it is that I have on deck.
That is so good. Next question. Do you know, or could you guess what phubbing is?
Good Lord.
It's a new word in the dictionary, Kelly.
I know. See, I have teenagers and I'm like in that stage where I'm like pretending to be cool and realizing I'm actually not. And so my daughters have like all these new words. Like what did I want to, oh my God, I can't remember. There was one that oh, dang. See, I don't even remember. Anyway, it's like the word for like somebody's, sort of like mojo with like a guy like hitting on a woman kind of a thing, except it's like a word. Anyway, I can't remember, but they have a whole vocabulary that I don't know about. And so to learn how to use a word correctly, like it's like a whole learning curve. So now I'm feeling that insecurity, and no, I do not know what it means, but it sounds like some sort of potentially like dangerous sexual practice or like some sort of, I don't know, like tech marketing ploy.
I'm going to release you from the wonder. It is phone snubbing. So it's literally when you're with someone and you just take out your phone in the middle of a conversation just to kind of scroll and check things, but the person's still talking to you. So it's so common that it's a word. It's called phubbing. So PHUBBING, phubbing. Yeah. So you're kind of getting fucked with, but not in that way.
Yeah, no. That's like such an important thing to name, probably, right? Because even with my daughters, like I've told them that I will not be in conversation, and I will like leave the space if you're going to look at a phone while I'm talking to you. Like so that's my boundary. Like I will exit. And I think training, like it requires training around like socialization practices and the, I don't know, commitment to those like basic practices, I think needs to be foregrounded. Otherwise we have this experience of like normalizing a very dehumanizing interpersonal habit.
Yeah. So now you can say to your girls, I'm not going to be phubbed.
I love it. You see? No,
and the new word is not FOMO. I've just learnt yesterday. It's FOMS. It's FOMS. It's FONS. Fear of not sharing. Like they have anxiety of not sharing something that they've just experienced. I've got to share this. I've got to load this up somewhere. So it's called FONS, wow. Fear of not sharing. So that's the next word that's just entered the dictionary. And I think you're right. We've got to keep up with the terms, but at the same time,
I know.
Yeah, it's just the way it is the way it is. Kelly, thank you so much for your incredible wisdom. If there's any final words that you want to share with us, go for it right now. And I'm going to look forward to having you back and enjoying more conversations, lively conversations with you.
Well, this is super fun and resonant. And yeah, I'll just mention something I was going to mention earlier, because I love what you were saying about like our hands becoming these like blunt force objects, or like de-articulated in their sophistication. And I was thinking about this teacher, Betty Martin, who has been very influential, just to sort of drop her name for your listeners, in my awareness of the potential that my body has, and specifically my skin, for sensual activation at any time. So she talks about like turning on your skin, and also like this practice she calls waking up the hands, right? Which is essentially a 5-minute practice where you, right? Because when I touch my hands right now, I'm receptively feeling the touch of my hand, my fingertips on, let's say, my left hand. But what about the fingertips, right? The fingertips are feeling bumps and, smooth spots and not so smooth spots and whatever. So the reclamation of that taking of touch has been totally revolutionary for me. And anyway, so I was going to plug that I have that practice being taught in my first in-person event ever that I've ever held. It's going to be here in Miami the first weekend in November, called Audacious Embodiment, in service of this rebellion, that you are up to, and I'm up to, what it is to bring women into their bodies and move through a lot of the shame that keeps us arrested in this dissociative, very small living kind of a practice. So yeah.
I love, and will always cheer you on, Kelly. I think I just adore you to my absolute core. I adore you. And thank you so much for living life lively and reminding us to do the same. And all these incredible pearls of wisdom, I'm sure we're going to be able to listen back on and just enjoy over and over again. So thank you, Kelly, for being here for Lively Conversations. And we look forward to having you back again.
Amazing. It's been a pleasure.